Okay, so we'll start with the title. Now, Sing Song is a pun because Singh is a traditional Sikh name. All men have to have Singh somewhere in their name, and it means lion. And Sing Song, of course, goes together and sounds like a song. And this poem really is a love song. It creates the sense, the term sort of sing song creates the sense that it's going to be a very kind of childlike, maybe light-hearted poem. As we go through the poem, we're going to discover that although it is very light-hearted, it has got some quite significant, serious points to make. Daljit Nagra, as you know, is a poet of Indian descent. He's lived in various places in the country, but he writes about the state of being caught between two cultures in a really very positive and celebratory way. I run just one of my daddy's shops. This is that kind of the stereotype of a Sikh family, that they've got lots and lots of shops. But he runs only one of those shops. He's only allowed to run one. And we think, oh, why only just one? And the reason for that, as we discover, is he's not very responsible. From 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock, well, he's expected to work 12-hour days from 9 o'clock to 9 o'clock. And that's that stereotype again of the Sikh shopkeeper working all the hours that are sent. And he want me not to have a break. So his dad thinks that he should never have a break during the course of the day, and thinks that he should work hard. This, you know, is linking with this whole idea that Asian shopkeepers work all hours. But when there's nobody in, I do de-lock, because of course what he does, he's wanted not to have a break, but when nobody's in, he does the lock and he goes upstairs to his wife, as we'll discover in the next stanza. Now, let's have a quick look at the language in this poem. So this poem uses, is written in dialect again. It's sometimes called Punglish, this form of language, because it's like a cross between Punjabi and English. Now, that's not a term actually that Nagra wrote or decided upon. It's just what some people use to describe the kind of writing that he uses. It's phonetic in its spelling, which means it's not just the words and phrases that are different, but he's spelling, he wants me to phonetically, the way that the character would say it. And this creates a really strong sense of voice. But also, of course, phonetic spelling, I missed out there. It creates a really strong sense of voice, but also, of course, it kind of represents these two cultures that he is living between within the language in a very kind of physical, direct way. So represents two cultural influences. Okay. Because up the stairs is my newly bride. So he's recently got married and he's calling her his bride. And again, a bit like Farmer's Bride, she's nameless, but she does not appear to be the property of a man. He's just talking about her with pride because they've recently got married. Vi share in chapati, vi share in the chutney. Interestingly, chutney has got a double meaning here because it can mean, it's like a Punjabi word for wife. And the idea of eating together is something that's quite important in their culture. Anyway, he goes upstairs to his wife and they eat together, and then of course they make love. And he uses this interesting simile to describe the way that they're making love, and I'll let you use your imaginations a little bit on that one. Like we are rowing through Putney, But it's an interesting simile, isn't it? Because obviously what we like to look for, of course, with similes is the different layers of meaning. There's kind of the sort of physical action that he's describing there. But also, he's chosen a very kind of culturally significant event in the UK, very, very British, the boat race, to connect this to. What an interesting idea, because he's linking with something very, very, very British kind of culture. You can go even further with this simile if you like, and you can start thinking about how the idea of him moving through London, moving through an area on the River Thames, almost like he is passing through and experiencing everything, maybe almost as a tourist, so that he doesn't feel like he quite belongs in London. I mean, of course, this poem's not set in London, it's set up north in Bradford. When I return with my pinny untied, so everyone can see where he's been, because he's not even done his apron up properly. When he comes back downstairs, the shoppers, like, they're not important, they're nameless, they're just like this whole group. They're not important to him. They know him by name. Hey, Singh, where you been? The shoppers always point and cry, hey, Singh, there you been? They know exactly where he's been. Your lemons are limes, your bananas are plantain. This dirty little floor need a little bit of a mop. In the worst Indian shop on the whole Indian road. So everything in the shop's mixed up. It's not where it should be. Your lemons are limes. We use a bit of alliteration here to sort of connect it together and continue with that idea of a song. Items are all in the wrong place. But in fact, one student once said to me, the lemons are limes could also just mean that they've gone off, because lemons start off sort of big and yellow, and then they kind of shrink and go a bit darker, a bit more like limes. And the same with bananas and plantains, plantains being a little bit darker in colour. So it could just be that they started to go off and he hasn't brought them in and swapped them for fresh ones. But he uses the alliteration to continue the sing-song kind of atmosphere. A sing-song tone. This dirty little floor need a bit of a mop. So it's dirty. He's left he hasn't been looking after the place. Little bit of mop. It's just slightly comical tone to continue this, and you can talk a lot through. You can talk a lot when you're writing about this poem about that, how that light comical tone is being created. The worst Indian shop on the whole of the Indian road. Now, he really doesn't care about this. This is repeated on the whole Indian road for emphasis. Repetition for emphasis. Okay, and we have a clear sense then that he's not doing his job properly and he really doesn't care about it. So upstairs, he can hear his wife moving around. And she's wearing high heels, tapping the ground. So already we are getting the sense that his wife is not a traditional Sikh bride. She's wearing her high heels, tapping around upstairs. Unusual attire for Sikh bride. I'm going to put a question mark because on its own, maybe not. We'll see as we move on. As my wife on the web is playing with the mouse. His wife is on the internet. She's on a Sikh lover site. Now, you can read a lot into this. You could think she's on an internet dating site herself, but that's highly unlikely. The most likely interpretation of this image is that she runs a matchmaking site, which is really popular within this culture. and she's kind of getting different people together, and she gets money to do that. So Sikh people join this group, this website, a bit like Muzmatch. Those of you who are Muslim will know about that, I'm sure. And sort of it allows people to find each other if they come from the same background, even if they're living in different parts of the country. So she's playing with her Sikh site, and she's netting 2 cats for the Sikh of the price. So she's the one in charge now. She's not like, again, not like a stereotypical bride. She's catching, like netting, mice and cats. It's a metaphor for bringing people together. And the idea of playing cat and mouse, and again, another light-hearted image about romance. She's bringing people together, but she gets paid for it. She books them for the meat at the cheese of her price. So she is making extra money. She's overcharging them. And he's kind of downstairs chuckling to himself at his wife's sort of slightly dishonest kind of attitude towards her Sikh lover site. And just here, to add to this light-hearted tone, she's playing. Okay, moving on. Then we get this repetition of my bride, and he is just demonstrating his absolute love for her. My bride, my bride, my bride. And the way he describes her as well, quite outrageous in a way. She's effing at my mum in all the colours of Punjabi. This is a metaphor, but it means, effing means swearing. Metaphor sort of showing for the colourful language that she's using. So she's swearing at her mother-in-law in Punjabi. That's, in some ways, that's quite shocking in any culture. But he's chuckling away. He thinks it's funny. Also, the fact that she is stumbling like a drunk, making fun at my daddy. Now, a Sikh father wouldn't be drinking, and if he were drinking, that would be like against his culture. So for her to make a joke out of it really is not something that she should be doing. She's going around, stumbling around, making fun of his dad. So she is breaking cultural traditions and expectations everywhere. But he's really proud of her. She's got the tiny eyes of a gun, another metaphor to show that she is strong, she is explosive, she is independent. She is definitely not a stereotypical woman. And the tummy of a teddy. Again, he is talking about her body, which he absolutely loves, because you can see that from the alliteration and the image of the teddy being something cuddly. And again, demonstrates his love. The alliteration, the effect of the alliteration there is to add to the comical tone. My bride. She have a red crew cut and she wears a tartan sari. Okay, so let's just have a think about that. Tartan sari, well, we know what a sari is. It's a piece of material that Asian women, particularly Indian, wrap around themselves and throw over the shoulder, which is traditional. But tartan is Scottish. Sari is Asian. Red crew cut is like a punk hairdo. Really, really short hair is a crew cut. Red can represent danger, but also romance. And the idea of this kind of punk haircut, very, very short hair. Really just not what you would normally expect from a woman of Indian descent. She's a real individual and he loves her for it. A donkey jacket is a workman's jacket. And some pumps on the squeak of the girls that are pinching my sweetie. So this is quite an interesting image and quite difficult to untangle, but essentially what he's saying is that she is, because she's wearing kind of training shoes, pumps, she's able to chase after anyone who is stealing from his shop. So she's his security guard as well as everything else. So she's wearing some pumps on the squeak of the girls that are pinching my sweeties. Okay, now in the next section, when he comes back from his time with his wife upstairs, his tickle of his bride, again, the shoppers always point and cry, "Hey, Singh, there you been." This is becoming a bit like a chorus now in this song, or a refrain, as it's known technically, like the repetition of something throughout the song. And again, different things that are wrong now. The milk is out of date, the bread's always stale, the things you have on offer you've never got in stock. Again, listing all the ways that he is not looking after the shop properly. And they know why. It's because he's been upstairs with his wife. Again, light-hearted tickle off my bride. Late, the tone changes at the end because it's nighttime now. Late in the midnight hour, when you shoppers are wrap up quiet. So this is nighttime now, midnight, and all the connotations, maybe of romance, possibly of the sort of danger of him doing something wrong. Somehow he shouldn't be downstairs in his shop at night. When you shoppers, he's addressing us directly here. So this is what he does to be a rebel at night time. We're wrapped up quiet when the precinct is concrete cool. The precinct is kind of the shopping area where his shop is. And concrete cool is an alliteration, quite harsh alliteration, and it's sort of it underlines this idea of it being cold outside. The quiet, but also the harshness of the precinct outside, which is going to contrast with what he and his wife are doing inside, because we come down whispering stairs, so they sneak downstairs at night. This kind of personification of the stairs, which is being used to reflect the couple whispering to each other and giggling because they're being a bit naughty. They're going downstairs into the shop at night. Maybe they shouldn't. Setting up the shop as a soft romantic setting. You also got the sibilance in there as well, and the whispering stairs, and that's continued onto the next line. We sit on my silver stool. So this is the stool behind the counter. where they're now sitting. But it obviously isn't really made of silver. It's silver coloured. The fact that he suggests, he uses the word silver to describe it, he uses the adjective silver, makes it sound precious and makes it sound romantic, like jewellery or whatever. And maybe even links with the idea of moonlight. And they're sitting behind the chocolate bars. Again, the reference to the chocolate bars on the counter. Of all the other things on the counter, he's chosen the chocolate bars because chocolate represents romance too. He's also behind bars though, isn't he? Which is really interesting. Because obviously they're bars of chocolate is one level of meaning. But almost like he is trapped behind the counter. He's trapped in this life that his father wants him to lead, where he's a shopkeeper. And perhaps he doesn't really want to be there. He maybe feels that he wants to go out and do something different for himself. He doesn't want to be part of this stereotype where all he does is run a shop. He wants to do something different. So maybe he's trapped in there. And maybe this could represent not just him, but anyone who feels trapped within cultural expectations, or even just family expectations. And he looks out of the window. So maybe he's trapped behind there, but he's looking out of the window. We stare past half-price window signs. So the half-price window signs are dull, boring, mundane, everyday kind of image. But he's staring past those and looking out of the window at the beaches of the UK in the brighty moon. So the moonlight is showing posters of the UK. And this is kind of like his dream of escape. And it's the moonlight that casts, the moon that casts light on those posters. So it's romance that allows him, that is perhaps going to be his means of escape. And showing him the way to individuality and something a little bit different. There's a lot in that short section. So have another look at it. Let's move on to the last bit. From the stall each night she say, how much you charge for that moon, baby? These last little three sections are these little groups of 2 lines are about the romantic conversation that he has with his wife. From the stall she say, how much do you charge for that moon, baby? Again, this further reference to moon, keep seeing references to moon all the way through. How much would you charge if you were going to sell that moon? And then the kind of term of endearment, baby. But he says it's half the cost of you, baby. Very romantic. Because obviously a moon is beyond monetary value. And she says, well, how much does that come to, baby? And he says, it's priceless, baby. You are priceless. So she is priceless. She and the moon, which represents romance, is beyond monetary value. And their life together is so much more to him than the money that he could make running his shop. He's not interested in money. He's interested in a future with her, and maybe a different future outside the shop, outside the confines of what he feels about his cultural identity.